Hey everyone, welcome to A Mess Nonetheless. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Melissa, and we are sisters.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Today we're going to get right into it because we got a lot to cover, and it's an interesting topic. We're going to talk about hot topics.
Hot topics.
But we are not going to exactly talk about hot topics because we're not actually going to talk about them.
The topics.
We're not going to talk about the hot topics. We're going to talk about how to be loving about hot topic. So I actually have a story I want to share. Years ago, maybe 8 years ago, I posted something on my Facebook page about abortion, and I do believe it was written respectfully and lovingly, and expressed my heart and struggle and all that. And I had someone, an old family friend, who I don't think she posted it on my response. I think she messaged me privately and was kind of like, so if you're interested, like, here's some thoughts I have. The way that you shared it, shared your heart and expressed what you feel, but it did not in any way share the love of Jesus for people who have made that choice in their life. And it in no way allows people to think, wow, this would be a safe person in my life if I ever wanted to discuss this.
Yep.
And I went back and read it, and I still to this day stand by it. It was done well, but what it was done was very closed-mindedly, if you will. And there's a girl that followed Melissa and I for years and years and years, and would tell us, she was young, a lot younger than us, and would tell us how much our faith inspired her and how she had gone back to found Jesus again and didn't come from a Christian family. And she messaged me and was basically like, I had to stop unfollowing you, or I had to stop following you because apparently this had happened in her life. She had had an abortion, and as a Christian, she had a lot of shame over it. And because of the closed-mindedness of my sharing my heart about the issue, she was like, I don't know how I can look to you anymore because you didn't see me as a person and a human who did it, even though I didn't even know that she had had an abortion, even though I didn't even know. But this family friend had said to me, I didn't allow for anyone to feel loved by me or Jesus in the way I presented it. And that rocked me, and it has changed everything for me. And I am so thankful that she had the willingness to share with me, because I really could have been very turned off by that, and I could have been defensive, and I wasn't. I was just like, oh my gosh, I never thought, I mean, I don't remember how I responded, but in my mind, I was like, I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
And so it has really changed how I present myself about any sort of hot topic. We're not talking about abortion. We're not going to talk about the hot topics that Christians really kind of get into it with each other. I really want people to hear my story and maybe ask themselves, do I ever do that? Do I ever share things on social media, maybe just even flippantly, a little political thing, or, whatever, just a flippant thing that would show, hey, I'm closed-minded and I am not willing to entertain conversations with you, or I'm not a safe space for you to come if you're struggling with this, or this. And I really have just come to understand that for all of us, I think social media, whatever, if you just want to share about your family and that's it, it's the only way when you want to use social media, that's fine too. But I think if we are sharing our life on social media, we should be sharing it in a way that represents the gospel, that represents Jesus. And if you listen to our podcast on women and how he valued women, Jesus was encountering sinners all the time, people who the society hated and whatever. And he was open-hearted and open-minded and loving, and he didn't push them away. And so I think it's just really important to talk about, how do we end up, if we end up in these conversations about these hot topics, how can we do it in a way that represents the gospel, that shows people the love of Jesus? Because I think everything we share on social media or comment on social media or obviously post, even like I said, even just responding to someone else's, it can draw us towards Jesus. It can draw other people towards Jesus, or it can turn people off to Jesus. Wouldn't you agree with that?
For sure. Well, and something I was thinking about while you're talking is a rule of thumb I've had for myself for years with social media. So, I was in network marketing for a long time. So my platform for social media was as much about building relationships as it was about hopefully building a business. And so with that, I would often think, okay, do I want to share? I mean, because I have a lot of strong opinions about a lot of things that most people who don't know me intimately don't know, because I decided a long time ago, if I put something out there, so just from a business aspect, if I put something out there, have I just cut off half of my followers because they're like, I don't agree with you, so now I don't want to do business with you. Whereas if they don't even know what I believe, I don't care what they believe. I mean, their beliefs don't bother me one way or the other. We all have the right to our beliefs, whatever. But if me putting it out there cut them off, well, that's bad business sense, right? Like, I just feel like businesses in general, they're pretty unwise to like go around posting a lot of or sharing, bulletins or whatever, like signs in their windows making really strong stances, because you're definitely going to cut off a huge chunk of your
Audience,
customers. Yeah. And obviously that's business, but that really showed me also, but I just want to do that in life. I don't want to put such strong statements out there that I have just cut off half the people who might be following me, that we might someday be able to have a one-on-one conversation.
Right.
So Young Life, Rachel and I have grown up in Young Life. Bill and I have been involved in Young Life. Rachel's been involved in Young Life. Our kids are on both sides, Wildlife, Young Life. And one of their catchphrases that we say as leaders is, with teenagers, we have to earn the right to be heard. And if we walk up to teenagers and just start telling them everything we're thinking and everything we're feeling, if we tell them all the things that, it's not okay to swear, it's not okay to smoke, and it's not okay to drink, they're going to turn around and walk away. Like, they're going to be like, I don't want to have anything to do with this person.
Yeah.
And that makes sense. We're like, that makes total sense. We can do that. We don't have to share our opinion about anything until we are in a position where we've earned the right for them to want to hear what we have to say. And I feel like
when someone is going to listen to your maybe other, like if you have an opposing opinion, they're going to listen to it in a much more open-minded way. If first you have a relationship, but second of all, you have earned the right, and they come to you and they ask, because otherwise, if we're just like putting in people's faces, that just turns people off real quick.
Exactly. And so I started looking at social media a long time ago as a place that I'm not really interested in. Like, I'm not the kind of person who can't keep my mouth shut. Like, my husband really had to like pull himself off of social media because he struggled. Justice is like, he's justice oriented. It's like a burning desire, which we need those people in our world to be like, I need to say the truth. Now, unfortunately, in this world, one truth can combat another truth, and now we're fighting, and now it's ugly. And so he had to remove himself. I haven't had to do that. I can overlook a lot of it, but I also have chosen to be very careful of what I put out there. Not because I'm afraid, but because I don't want to shut people off that maybe if I just kept my mouth shut, they could get to know Jesus someday. Like, that's ultimately my goal. I don't care what they think of me so much. I care how I'm representing Jesus, like you said.
If our goal is to show the world Jesus, and we automatically like lose half of our audience, if you will, because we post about other unnecessary things to people's salvation, it will eliminate. I mean, people won't even take us seriously.
Right. Yeah.
And the thing is like, okay, so I do want to say, so yes, how you post, like whatever, but I think it's important, like, that we pay attention to how we are even interacting on someone else's post, because
for sure.
In fact, I have seen people post on other people's, and I was like, oh, you would never post that on your personal page. And if it was a close enough friend, I would say, hey, you wouldn't post that on your personal. Well, no, it's divisive. I'm like, but then why did you interact with that person who made the divisive comment, and you were kind of like, yeah, that's right. Because now you are part of the division. You are part of the issue.
You're cheering it on.
Exactly. And this person that I said this to was very open. It was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. It was like, if you wouldn't post it on your own page, like, because you wouldn't want someone to see it, why would you comment it on someone else's? And, and obviously we're talking about social media, but we can have hot topic conversations in person too. And I honestly do feel like that's probably the only place we should really be having.
Agreed. Them. Yes. One-on-one is for in person or on a phone call, like, where you're like have each other's, you can hear each other's voices, you can hear each other's inflections, you can hear,
Exactly. And I'm like, we should be loving other people as image bearers. Like every single person on this earth is an image bearer of God. God made every single person on this earth, and he has claimed and loves every single person on this earth. And we should be treating people that way.
Mm-hmm.
But especially when they disagree with us, that can be hard to do. Or when
Yeah.
maybe someone in our life posts very outwardly about their big, and you just want to get in there and say something.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, but are we treating them as an image bearer if we disagree with them, and and we treat them differently? And my mom and I were talking, or our mom and I were talking about how like sometimes people can't even be in relationship with people who vote politically different than them.
Mm-hmm.
They will like end relationships.
It's true.
And I'm like, that is really, really sad. Also,
Yeah.
I saw something today from a Christian who was like, has tons of followers, right? And is like, you're never going to get me to say who I'm voting for because that's just like so distracting. It's distracting people from Jesus. And I saw someone comment, I really wish I knew far less or about far less people who they vote for. It's like, yes, because I'm like, because then it gets in the way. It gets, people are allowed to vote how they want. That's the beauty of democracy. Melissa and I have not always voted the same. Sometimes we have, and sometimes we haven't. And I'm like, that's the beauty of democracy. But the thing is like, it used to be like taboo to tell someone who you were voting for. And now it's like people are so out there about it. And then that can actually sometimes put up barriers in relationships. And I'm not saying never tell anyone who you're voting for. That's up to you to decide. But like just know how it can change someone's opinion or be like their even willingness to present.
Well, I'm sure everyone listening can think of a person where they suddenly realized something, whether it's the way they voted or a stance that they had that they didn't know until they did it. Suddenly it changed everything about the way they looked at them. And I'm not, again, like Rachel's saying, it's not that we shouldn't know these things about each other. We should be mature enough and adult enough to be able to have conflicting conversations with conflicting opinions. But it's definitely not going to happen over social media. You're not going to change anyone's opinion about any hot topic of any sort by blabbing your mouth about it on social media. If anything, you're giving them reason to like be like, see, I don't want to be like that. Like, even if they are just like you and just from the other side of things.
That's often how it works.
Usually how it is. The ones who are so outwardly annoyed at that side is just as loudly outwardly annoyed at that side. It's ridiculous.
Exactly. It's so true. It's so true. So I think that we should aim in all things to listen to people with an open mindset to learn. So let's say I really struggle with how Melissa voted politically. I do not, but let's just say I did. What I don't think makes sense is to tell her all the reasons that I vote the way I do. Right. And try to convince her to vote the way I do. I don't think that makes any sense. Instead, I think I should approach her if I really had a concern about it and be like, help me understand how you've landed on your voting, right? Yeah. If it really mattered to me. And then I would need to listen with an open mindset to learn, not because I'm expecting it to change my mind or even to change their mind, but then I can understand. Like if it really bothered me, I should be asking questions to understand. It does not. And we do not need to have these conversations. We have had conversations like that in the past, but not because it bothered us so much. But if you, like, let's say someone in your life views abortion or homosexuality different than you, and instead of trying to convince them of how you feel, ask them, how did you land on those things? Yeah. Like, wherever you landed, how did you land there? Like, and learn with an open mind to listen. And if we can't
listen
do that,
with an open mind to learn.
What did I say?
You said learn with an open mind to listen.
Oh, yeah,
I had to think. I was like, wait, what does that mean? Because if your intention is to listen to respond, then you're not in the right frame of mind. You should be asking the question. If you truly are like, oh, I'm going to sit here and listen, and I'm thinking of all the things I can't wait to respond to, you're missing the point. No.
And honestly, that if we cannot do that, listen with an open mindset to learn, we should not be entering conversations.
Yep.
Period. Yep. Like if you are like, nope, I am too riled up about guns or abortion or whatever. If you're too riled up that you cannot listen with an open mindset, like Melissa said, you're not ready for that conversation. Yeah. And I think that is really something we all as Christians need to be working harder on recognizing and implementing in our lives, because everyone is looking at Christians on social media and laughing their full heads off because We're loud, we're hypocritical, we're obnoxious. Now, I'm not saying non-Christians can't be loud and well, actually, I read this thing recently that said non-Christians really aren't hypocritical in general because they are living according to their life values.
Yeah. They're not saying their values are one thing and then doing another.
They're living according to their values.
They're like, this is my value. And that's how I live. Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. Mm-hmm. And like, also a lot of Christians might struggle with that truth. Mm-hmm. Like, well, no. They're the sinners. They're the, but it's like, but also they're not even being hypocritical.
Yeah. Because they never committed to following Jesus. They've never said, right. I want to follow him and become like him. They've never said that. They're just living themselves. And whether that's what we want for everyone or not, that's not right. The point. The point is right. That they have not done anything. People who don't know or follow Jesus, don't acknowledge him as their savior, they are doing nothing wrong by not following him because they never committed to following him. They're not doing anything wrong by not living biblically because they never committed to living biblically.
Exactly. So I think it's really important to ask ourselves when we are posting or getting into a conversation about a hot topic, who is our audience, right? Mm-hmm. So if we are hoping that by posting something, non-Christians are going to read it and they're going to weep, they're going to like be moved. I think that we need to be paying attention to who are we hoping. If you're just posting to someone who already believes like you, okay, yeah, then they're going to respond or whatever. But other people see it too. But
even amongst believers of Jesus, followers of Jesus, we don't all agree.
No,
and so
of course.
We're still not necessarily, I mean, like, yeah, you're still not showing the love of Jesus if you are trying to get to somebody who thinks differently than you.
Exactly. Well, and Paul says in 1 Corinthians, what business is it of mine to judge those outside of the church? Mm-hmm. And he said, are you not to judge those inside? God will judge those on the outside. It's not our business to be judging people who think differently of us, who aren't even Christians.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to recognize who's our audience. If our audience is non-Christians, why would we hold them to the same standard that we hold ourselves to? Because we believe the word. We listen, we read the Bible. And then in Matthew 22, it says, one of them, an expert of the law, tested Jesus with this question, teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? And he replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is love your neighbor as yourself. Yep. All the law and prophets, so everything from the Old Testament, hang on these two commandments. Loving others as yourself. Mm-hmm. Loving God first with everything you have and loving others as yourself. And it's like, I don't know. I just don't understand why we get into this mindset sometimes. And I've been there, I've done it, but I don't understand. It's so backwards and twisted that as a Christian, that I would hold a non-Christian to the same Christian standard that I hold myself to.
Right.
There's a quote here from a guy, his name's Carey Nieuwhof. I've seen a lot of stuff from him. He's like a pastor, maybe in his 60s. He's written a lot of books. And he said, before you judge a non-Christian for behaving like a non-Christian, think about this. They act more consistently with their value system than you do.
Yeah.
It is difficult for a non-Christian to be a hypocrite because they tend to live out what they believe.
Yep.
Chances are they're better at living out their values than you and I. Jesus never blamed pagans for acting like pagans.
Right.
But he did call out religious people for acting like self-righteous hypocrites.
Yeah.
Some of the most judgmental Christians have zero non-Christian friends. And he says, is that a surprise, really? Because judgment is a terrible evangelism strategy. People,
right.
Okay, I got to say it again. Some of the most judgmental Christians have zero non-Christian friends. And is that a surprise? Because judgment is a terrible evangelism strategy. Yeah. People do not line up to be judged.
No, nobody wants to be judged. It's the worst.
He says, if you want to keep being ineffective at reaching unchurched people, keep judging them.
Yeah.
If you want to be ineffective at reaching unchurched people, keep judging them. And honestly, if we are so black and white about our beliefs on social media, you can be black and white about your beliefs in your heart. But if we are putting it out there, non-Christians feel judged. They think, well, you're such a hypocrite. They start pointing out all our flaws. And we are not reaching people for Jesus.
Well, and I mean, if all we have to do is go back and read any story about Jesus, and his interaction was non-judgmental. His interaction was grace. His interaction was kindness
with the quote unquote sinners.
Yes, with the ones that they were regularly setting him up to try to frame him for whatever, all the things. And the Pharisees, the religious people, were the ones that he was more judgmental towards because they were terrible. And so if we think as Christ followers, it's our job. Okay, so I've heard before, we don't need to defend God. God can defend himself. Like,
I said that. I just did a reel on that. Did you?
Oh, funny. No, I did not.
Really?
That's so funny. That's funny. So and I've thought about that a lot. Like, when I think sometimes we feel like, well, we got to stand up for God and we got to make sure everyone knows. We're like, oh, and I feel like God's thinking, oh no, I'm okay. I don't need to stand up for me. I need you to live out the way I sent my son. And
you're my boots on the ground.
Yeah. And getting mad at people.
My own reputation.
Right. And getting mad at people on my behalf, judging them on my behalf is not going to help anything. It's in just, whereas if we walk in the way that Jesus walked, love the way Jesus loved, there is no judgment. There literally no judgment. Like, even when he had the right to judge, he didn't judge. And so
I did not come to condemn the world. I came to save it, he said.
Right. And so if we're ever like confused, like, well, no, it's my job to, make sure people know this. Like, no, our job is to be like Jesus. That's our job. And the Bible is very clear that he says, go be fishers of men and
make disciples of all the nations. That's what Jesus said. So if our audience is non-Christians and we're hoping to judge them into post something to make them understand, it's that's not going to work, period. If our audience is for other Christians and we're like, hey, you're not doing this well, then I think it needs to be done in a way that the rest of the world sees and still sees Jesus in us.
Well, and my thought about that is that I think the best way we can ever post about a challenge is to ourselves. I am recognizing this. I am working on this. Because then I'm not pointing my finger at anyone. No, and if it resonates with someone, awesome. But if I'm talking about myself, most likely someone's not going to come along and be like, how dare you say that? Because I'm talking about myself.
Exactly.
And whereas if we say you or even we, that can feel judgy too, because we can feel judged by Christians also. Christians can feel judged by Christians, and Christians can judge Christians. And so, yeah. And if we have something that we really need, like with Rachel, this woman who was like, hey, I need to talk to you about this. She went privately to her and was like, can we talk about this privately?
Yep.
Because you're going to feel way different than if she posted it right in your, publicly. Like, that suddenly is going to just put you on defense.
It feels like a public rebuking versus her being like, hey, sister in Christ to sister in Christ, I have some thoughts.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's always going to be, among Christians, we're always going to feel differently, view things differently about these hot topics, right? Politically, all the things. And that's tricky too, because I think a lot of Christians can get into the mindset of, well, if you're a Christian, there's only one way to believe about this.
Yeah.
And I understand that is, those are hard things to navigate. But we have a friend who has come to me and asked me a situation in her family, and she was struggling with not like a cousin or something. And she was struggling with, how do I interact with this person based on this way that they choose to live their life? And I said, I don't know why you would act any differently to them, because you loved them before, and I assume you love them now. And you're telling me this person, and I didn't say it rude or anything. I feel like I'm saying it a little rude now, but you are telling me this person doesn't know Jesus. So the only way they're ever going to see Jesus in you is if you just continue to love this person. And she was like, oh my gosh, that's so simple. Here I was like, how do I do this? What does this look like? And I was like, it looks exactly the same. I don't understand.
Well, because if we change the way we love them based on something they're choosing to do or be or live their life that we don't agree with, and now suddenly we act like we don't love them, that is such conditional love. And Jesus is unconditional love, period.
Right.
And it just means you love people exactly where they're at, and where that goes from there. And also, you guys, we have to remember that it is our job to show people Jesus. It is not our job to save them. And so if we present Jesus, if we present Jesus to someone and they just are like, nope, I'm not interested, we can't pressure them into it.
Right.
And we don't want to push them away with our with our judging, and now we never get the chance to be good news to them.
Exactly. So I feel like we covered a lot. Do you have anything else you think we need to talk about?
No. I guess the only thing I would say is, one thing I hear people talk about on social media is they're like, well, it's my page. If you don't like it, keep on scrolling. Like I have the right to say what I want to say. And you're not wrong. You do have the right to say what you want to say, but that goes back to Rachel's original question is, do you want to be good news to people? Do you want people to know Jesus? And if you're like, I don't care about Jesus, I don't care about, well, then obviously you're not going to care about anything. This is not going to pertain to you. But if you have any desire for the people in your life to know Jesus, or the people who do know Jesus to know that you love Jesus, because I think sometimes, you guys, there's people that I find out that they're a believer and I'm like, oh, I wouldn't have expected that based on the way they talk to people and the way they treat people or whatever. And so, this is where we don't live out our rights. We live out our love.
Well, the Bible says that we have to die to ourselves.
Exactly.
So our rights. Yeah. As a human, you have the right to do whatever you want on social media and on your page, but like that is not dying to yourself.
Right. Never once have I felt loved by Bill when he does something that hurts me and he's like, well, I have the right to do that.
Exactly. Oh my gosh.
Okay, then now I feel better.
Oh my gosh. So here's my challenge to people. Melissa, you essentially said it. And I wrote it down. Do you want to be good news to people? And is the way that we interact with others about hot topics, online, in person, whatever, showing the good news of Jesus to people?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yep.
All right.
There we go.
Well, I feel like it was a little heavy.
I'm surprised it didn't take longer to talk about.
I am too. I expected this one to be our longest, but yeah, we're not even at 30 minutes yet. So.
All right. Well, thanks for hanging in there with us, you guys.
Yeah. Well, we really value hearing from you guys. What has impacted you, what has not, any topics you'd like us to cover, things like that. Yeah. We'd like to hear from you. So, all right. You guys have a good day.
Bye, guys.
You might feel that your life is a mess, but don't feel bad. Ours is too, but we own a microphone and we have no shame. That's why we'll talk about how our life is a mess nonetheless. That's the name of our podcast.